The Truth Occurs. The Truth Occurs.
Hi everyone. Well, I've been following the news about Egypt as best as I can, and it appears that it's total chaos over there. Secret police blamed as peace protesters are gunned down in the siege of Cairo. It basically looks like a war zone over there, and even last week it had come out that some of the looting was done by criminals who had been recently released from prison and given guns, because there is a gun ban. And also government officials were caught looting. And now it's possible that the government's actually sending people in there to incite violence. The army has been called in, but apparently they're being accused now of not doing much to stop the protesters. It's now just practically a war in the streets. You've got the anti-Mubarak protesters, and then you've got the pro-Mubarak protesters also, and they're kind of fighting with each other. You've got the army, and they're not doing very much, and then you've got the government sending people in to incite violence, so it's totally crazy. Also, journalists are getting attacked in Egypt, and one of them has been CNN's Anderson Cooper. It says here, according to CNN producer, Anderson Cooper was hit in the head 10 times by pro-government supporters on Wednesday. All right, I gotta say, when I watch the news here, knowing everything that I know, having done the research I've done, for example, like the article on globalresearch.ca, the protest movement in Egypt, dictators do not dictate, they obey orders. I'm like, oh my God, like, you think I'm stupid or something? I'm like so insulted. The situation in Egypt is not to be blamed on Mubarak. It goes way beyond that. It has a lot to do with the US and the IMF, and he was a model IMF pupil, as they say. And actually, he's 83 years old now, and he's probably on his way out anyway. And the groups, the Facebook and Twitter groups, they were funded, organized, and trained by US organizations and Muslim Brotherhood and others. They have ties to CIA and funding from them and things like that. So it just starts to look like a big charade when you see then on the news here, they're being very supportive, you know, of Egyptians, and like, yeah, you know, they got to get a new government in there, and which is all true. Their government's totally screwed up and they're in a bad situation. But, you know, you can tell a lot in terms of where the New World Order stands on this by how the Western media is responding, and they're very supportive of Egypt, which would tell me that this is all in the plans of the New World Order. So what is the media talking about? They're talking about Mubarak, but they're not talking about the role of the IMF, the World Bank, the Bilderberg Group, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and the US government in all of this. Well, what kind of information are you really going to get from our highly controlled media? Speaking of Anderson Cooper, there's even some evidence that Anderson Cooper himself has links to the CIA. It says here that he spent summers interning for a career with the CIA at the agency's monolithic headquarters in Langley, Virginia, in a program for students interested in intelligence work. His involvement with the agency ended there, apparently, and he chose not to pursue a job with the agency after graduation, according to a CNN spokeswoman who confirmed details of Cooper's CIA involvement to Radar. I think being, you know, in the CIA is a bit like being in the mafia or anything else like that. Once you're in, you can't really get out, you know, a bit like Skull and Bones. You can't just say, okay, well, thanks, it's been interesting, but I've changed my mind. I'm just going to go live out my happy existence at my place and maybe do a little gardening. So would it come as a surprise that Anderson Cooper has ties to the CIA? No, of course not. Not to me. All right, but the question is this really spiraling out of control, what's going on in Egypt, or is it under control, as it has been all along? Well, I tend to think that the species Illuminatus octopus is a highly adaptive one. He uses a multi-pronged approach and always has several backup plans. Here he can be observed cogitating on plans C and D. Case in point, here's a document that came up a while ago from the Rockefeller Foundation, Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development. Basically, these were 4 different possible scenarios for what our world would be like in the future, and also what technology would be like in the future. Well, as you see, they've come up with at least 4: Lockstep, Clever Together, Hack Attack, and Smart Scramble. And I'd like to point out that, of course, you're not going to get any real truth from the Rockefeller Foundation. I mean, you might get a little bit of an insight into how things work in terms of them having, it's not like there's just one plan. If that doesn't go through, everything's going to fall apart, obviously. But you're not going to really get any real truth here. I mean, this is like a propaganda document as well. For example, in lockstep, you've got tyranny, imposed by force. Everything is under control of this authoritarian government. And down the road, there's pushback. That's the downside, according to them. Clever together is you're not forced into global government. You're kind of conned into it, and everybody kind of works together. How clever under global government. But of course, it turns out in the end that, without lockstep, it proves to be unsustainable. Then you've got hack attack, where the hackers kind of take over, things deteriorate into chaos. But even here, there's very heavy propaganda, because they say things like, on the bright side, people start making GMOs in their backyard. Great, good, yeah. On the downside, people start making vaccines in their backyard, and then people don't want to take vaccines anymore because they're getting poisoned. Because vaccines are really good for you, as long as, Big Pharma's making them. Propaganda everywhere. And then you've got smart scramble, the other scenario. I feel bad for the Egyptians, like I said before, they have a lot of balls. I mean, they have a lot of courage and solidarity. But the reason that this uprising is happening like that over there is because that is the way that it was prepared to happen. That is the way the New World Order arranged for it to happen and allowed it to happen. And you're not going to get that kind of thing happening in North America. It's not in the cards. They have a different approach for us over here. They shut down their internet over there. They're not going to shut down the internet over here. They have a different approach. A more gilded cage, you could say. But nonetheless, they just have a very multi-pronged approach. So, would we have headed into lockstep or clever together? Maybe we're heading into hack attack now. In all the scenarios, the web of lies is never brought down. They continue to have us deceived on a large scale in every area of our life all the time. I mean, there is no scenario where we all realize that we're all one. We need to get rid of biotech and big pharma, and that everything has been a lie all along, and we need to work together and get rid of big government and big industries and all that, and corporatism. That's not one of the scenarios. It always exists within those lies, that you need the government to protect you. When the government breaks down, chaos ensues. The big government, So I tend to think that this is at least, mostly orchestrated and probably going according to plan, and it's just giving the illusion of a meaningful rebellion. But let's see what happens down the road. But it doesn't mean that there's only one plan for the New World Order. They're adaptive. It could go one way or it could go the other, but it's always going to remain within certain parameters, and those are, the lies. The big lie. Everything is a lie. That is going to remain. All right, well, thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.